Hi, I'm Daniel J. Lane, and I like films. If you like films, please like me. Here's the situation. Big deal. Disney have given us release dates for the first films in Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's a mouthful. Now, at this stage, I don't trust no bitch. But it's nice to have a save the date, you know? However, it's come to my attention that some of my subscribers, and indeed some of my friends, haven't seen any of them. I can't let that slide. I want to help you. I know it's intimidating. There are 3,000 minutes worth of Marvel movies, 50 days. No, 50 hours. 2 days. Still a lot. So, I have put together what I consider to be the ultimate Marvel Cinematic Universe starter kit. I watched all the movies, so you don't have to. You're welcome. What are my qualifications for making this list? Well, I've seen them all, I have a degree in film, and my work ethic is low. That's why I'm ranking the Marvel films rather than being in them. I will say though, even though I'm going to tell you to skip most of the films, you can't have a bad time watching a Marvel film. I think the worst I felt coming out of a Marvel movie was, yeah, that was alright. Which is a perfectly acceptable evening. I'm trying to narrow these movies down to the bare necessities, the ones I think you must watch, the ones that give you crucial info or crucial vibes, these are vibes, apparently, that you can't pick up elsewhere along the way. So, TLDR, there are only 3 categories for this. Must watch, the films you have to watch immediately right now, no questions. Night in, the films you can save for when you just want to treat yourself to a little evening at home. Perhaps a date night, perhaps a Wednesday. And rainy day, the films that you will enjoy, but probably save them for when there is literally nothing else to do. Right, are we ready? Buckle up, strap in, stay hydrated, let's do this. Let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start. It's 2008. Everyone's wearing baby doll dresses, the Olympics are in Beijing, Beyonce's just got married, and this comes out. It's weird looking back at it because it's so grounded. It's very much a superhero movie in 2008. It sets the tone for the whole franchise. Not to go there with the first film, but the thing that distinguishes Marvel from DC is that it's very light-hearted in tone. And Tony Stark is both the genesis and the epitome of that tone. Also, no spoilers, but if there's one narrative arc that ties the entire franchise and all the various strands together, it's Tony Stark. Ladies and gentlemen, we have our first must-watch. Next we have The Incredible Hulk, and already I'm going to break my own rules because it deserves its own category, which is, oh yeah, basically everyone's forgotten that Ed Norton played the Hulk in a standalone movie in 2008, and if they've remembered it, this is the first time they thought about it in a while. Maybe a bit unfair, because it's not a bad movie. It's got its moments, it's fun, it's got a bit of a King Kong vibe, but it's the Hulk. You know what the Hulk does. It gets big and green and smashes things. There you go, that's the whole film. Pour one out for Liv Tyler. She gave it the old college try, but if this is the first time that you've remembered Liv Tyler was in the MCU, I don't blame you. Oh, I'll tell you one thing it has going for it. It begins the Marvel tradition of people going on yoga retreats in cabins in big mountainy, foresty locations. So yeah, you can go back to forgetting it ever existed. Marvel have, so I didn't see Iron Man 2 until about 2019 when I did a colossal rewatch ahead of Endgame, so trust me when I say you can do quite happily without it, which is not to say it doesn't have moments. We have the introduction of Scarlett Johansson as Natasha Romanoff, which is incredibly fun, if not incredibly dated. She does kind of smack of that late noughties feminism refracted through the male gaze, insofar as she kicks ass, but she's also a hot piece of ass. Wow. Mickey Rourke's in it, and he's a bit weird. I mean, I guess he's cool, he's got all of that electricity, but he's just kind of there. This is definitely a rainy day boy. As is, unfortunately, Thor. I have a soft spot for the Thor movies because I like mythology, I like magic-adjacent stuff, and I like big arms, and we'll get to big arms. I genuinely got very close to making this a must-watch because Loki is in this film, and Loki is the big bad of the first Avengers movie, so did the dynamic in this film benefit the viewing of that film? Not really. I think Avengers gives you enough of an introduction to who these two are to each other that this movie gets pushed down 2 whole notches. It's rainy day, I love it, but whatever. Also not helping is that Thor is in that awkward in-between phase of growing out his hair. It's not long enough to be cool yet. It's almost like late 90s jeans model. Could have done with a bit of sea salt spray if you ask me. And you're here, so you did ask me. Cappy Big Boy the First Avenger. It's a night-in film. An ode to the power of steroids and boomer nostalgia for a war they didn't even fight, is what I'd say if I was being reductive. But I'm not here for that. I like it. It's fun. They're all fun. What piercing insight. Hugo Weaving is camp, Toby Jones is camp, it's all very camp. And Hayley Atwell is so good in this film, she manages to spin off her character into her own franchise and maintain a lot of affection in the fanbase, despite the fact that the main timeline jumps 70 years ahead of her. In terms of plot details, it does introduce the MacGuffin that is the basis of the first Avengers and, if we're honest, most of the franchise. But, as with Thor, it's not introduced in a way that you can't pick up in The Avengers, known in the UK as Marvel's Avengers Assemble. Yeah. Imagine if I said you could skip this one. Come on, it's the OG. It's the proof of concept. It's the movie that launched 1,000 extended universe crossover franchises. Maybe that goes against it. I watched the first hour back in prep for this video, and I have to say, 2 things surprised me. 1, it moves pretty fast. I didn't notice the first hour go. And 2, the exposition is on point. The introduction to characters and storylines for audiences who might not have gone to see the other ones and they've just come along for the ride, it's pretty stellar. I like it when there's no messing about. You know, it's like, here's the people, here's why they're super, bring them together, bish bash bosh, keep up, come on. It does feel slightly dated now. I can't work out whether that's because it's 10 years old, or if it's because the direction feels a little bit small screen sometimes. Do you know what I mean? Well, I guess you don't, because you haven't seen it. That's why you're here. There's a bit where Hawkeye is coming down from a mind control situation, and the visual effects look a bit Sci-Fi Channel. Incidentally, I had the COVID vaccine a couple of weeks ago, and this is a pretty good visual representation of what the side effects felt like. But either way, it's the fucking Avengers, man. It's just so special. Seeing it for the first time at the cinema in 2012 was so special, and it felt so fresh, and it was like, wow, we're in the cool times. And it still feels special and tingly to watch it now. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a must watch. Phase 2 kicks off with Iron Man 3, which I'm calling a night-in movie. I did toy with making it a must-watch. It has a lot going for it. It's ballsy, and I like it. It has one of the most controversial, and for my money, one of the most spectacularly judged moments in the entire franchise. It's the most iconic plot twist since Roxy Andrews pulled off her wig to reveal another wig. Was this the kind of commentary you were expecting? It also continues the character development of Tony Stark as he evolves from Jesus, genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist, and he starts pivoting towards great power, great responsibility town, which we'll get to. On top of the character stuff, there's also a biological development within Tony that serves for a nice bit of symbolism in this film and a great emotional moment later on in the series. And it's a Christmas movie. On this I will not be swayed. So it has a lot going for it. It's just that even with all of that, I don't think I can fully class it as a must-watch. So I've called it a night-in movie, but I really think you should watch. Put a little asterisk next to it. Thor: The Dark World. Everybody shits on this film, but I like it. His hair looks great. Also, it's largely set in London, which gives most films an extra tick for me. And it has one of those geo-lock jokes that, like, to most of the world is quite innocuous, but if you watch this in a cinema in London, biggest laugh of the night. I think the reason most people don't love it is because the villain is quite nondescript. They're a bit characterless. It's like, oh, there's some dark elves and they want to make everything dark. That's about it. There's no flavour. Christopher Eccleston plays the villain, but you wouldn't know it. But it has a lot going for it. The big action sequence at the end is basically Portal, which I really enjoy. There's a beautiful and poignant sequence on Asgard with Thor's mum, which I really enjoy. Thor's arms, which I really enjoy. Makes me ask a lot of questions. I don't have the answers. Who does? And it's the shortest movie in the franchise. Very nice. I also think making it a rainy day movie will make you more inclined to be nice to it. I'm being strategic. Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Now, we've reached a turning point because this is the first movie in the franchise directed by Joe and Anthony Russo. And these guys would do such a good job with this film that they would basically be given the reins to the most crucial films in the entire franchise. There is one giant reveal in this film, which is pretty tasty, but it doesn't have a massive effect on the rest of the series. I won't lie, it's pretty sick, and some important characters are introduced, but crucial, must-watch? I don't know. I think you'll be curious by this point, but if you really want to race through, I think you can come back another day. As they call it in French, Le Gardien de la Galaxie. I'm reliably informed. This was a bit of a game changer for me. I'm a massive wrestling fan, so when I heard that Dave Batista was going to be in a Marvel film, I was ecstatic. And then I read the film in question was Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's set in space, and there's a raccoon and a talking tree, and I was like, oh, this isn't going to be another Kevin Nash and Ninja Turtles situation, is it? I was also a bit skeptical of the MCU going skyward, because we'd had aliens before, but suddenly being entirely set in space? Is it a bit chaotic? Is it a bit too much for my tiny brain to handle? No, this is the first movie that I am making a must-watch. Not just for the canon, but because it's really fucking good. And I think it was pivotal for the MCU because it was the highest rated movie since the original Iron Man, and it expanded the universe and opened the entire narrative up, but most importantly, we get properly introduced to Thanos, who is the big bad of the whole series. He first popped up in the post-credits of The Avengers, which forced the entire cinema-going audience to pretend they knew who he was, but now he gets a healthy bit of backstory, which is quite crucial. This film is so good, it feels familiar but different, it's fresh and exciting and brash and bold and packed full of heart, and you should absolutely watch it. Plot twist: Avengers Age of Ultron I considered not making a must-watch. Not only that, I considered making it a rainy day film. I don't know if I'm just still bitter that all of my friends were invited to the premiere and I was left home watching MasterChef, which I know, check your privilege, but I have checked it, and you would all feel the same way if all of your friends were hanging out with Chris Evans and you were stuck with Greg Wallace. But even though I don't think it's necessarily a highlight of the entire MCU, it does have a few crucial MacGuffins, and the introduction to a couple of characters who have their own TV show that recently made me cry to the point of dehydration. So yes, Age of Ultron is a must-watch, and it also sets in motion a very big city-sized plot development that forms the basis of our next must-watch. But first, I like Paul Rudd and his ability to not age at all whatsoever. This one you can skip. It's a weird one, this, because it was originally supposed to be directed by Edgar Wright, and it was like a years-long passion project for him, and his fingerprints are still in it. But he ended up having to leave production because of a disagreement over direction, and I don't know whether or not that affected how the film turned out. I just don't feel massively attached to it. Still a good time. There's a sequence with the Thomas the Tank Engine that made me cackle, but it's in the trailer, so 86% on Rotten Tomatoes, 4 stars from Empire. You'll have a good time, but for me, wait until the clouds are out. Phase 3 kicks off with Captain America Civil War, a must-watch. This film is tense and electric from start to finish. There's a lot of character development here. Things have been bubbling for a little while, and the pot boileth over. I actually think it's misnamed. It's not really a Captain America film. If anything, it's Avengers 2.5. If anything, it's Iron Man 4. This is so good. It has all the crashes and bangs and wallops of a superhero movie, but it also has a really complex emotional through line that's on par with a lot of great thrillers. And there is a shot in the climactic battle sequence, and those who have seen this film will know what I'm talking about. It has something of the Greek tragedy about it. It's almost like a Da Vinci painting. Oh, it is so good. Also, do you remember earlier on when I was talking about big arms? There is a bicep in this movie, which, fucking hell. Very silly, utterly gratuitous. Hard to argue with. If I had biceps like that, I'd insist on a close-up too. Doctor Strange, I am classifying as a night in, because I saw this movie twice and fell asleep in the same place twice, which is not necessarily a criticism of the film. Maybe I just find Benedict Cumberbatch soothing. Although, watching an American accent come out of arguably the most English face ever, bit of a weird experience, won't lie. This was a hard one to place, because it does contain a fairly critical Infinity Stone. And I do love magic. I love it very much. But does it contain crucial information to the narrative that you couldn't possibly get anywhere else? I'm gonna say probably not. It's a bit of a toss-up. However, it is one that I'm gonna revisit in the wake of a certain sobfest of a TV show, and I will endeavour to stay awake. I am sorry to this man. Guardians 2, Night In. Ooh, I feel like I might get in trouble for this one. Based on my criteria, you can skip this one, but I wouldn't, because if the first one was full of heart, the BPM for this one is off the chain. It is a beautiful and complex story about chosen family that made me feel a million things and made my flatmate at the time play a Cat Stevens song on loop for about 3 months, and I didn't even get sick of it. Fun fact, I first saw this film at a screening at the Google offices where they just installed a new 3D projector. A bunch of us were there, drinks were had, I met Dave Bautista, managed not to cry, and then we all piled into the screening room to watch the movie. Problem was, no one had notified the rest of the building that we were there, and the air conditioning in the building was on a timer, and you couldn't switch it on and off remotely. So, at genuinely one of the most critical moments of the motion picture, the projector overheated and shut down. We all had to pile out and wait for the room to cool down and then try again, but it happened again! And the second time it conked out, a lot of people left, but about 5 of us were very dedicated to seeing this through. So we did, and for the last half hour, I clenched my ass so hard, but we made it through, and even with all of that interruption, I still cried bucket loads. This is a great film. But yeah, if you really want to bash through them, you can skip it. You're dead inside, but Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, at this point, we've seen Spider-Man's origin story about 9,648 times, but thankfully, Marvel know that, and we've already met Spider-Man in Civil War, so we're not going anywhere near it. We also have the amusing continuation of Aunt May getting younger with each new Spider-Man. Interestingly, this also happens with Alfred in Batman. At this stage, I'm half expecting Robert Pattinson to be hanging out in a cave with that kid from Stranger Things. This is a very fun film, and Michael Keaton is just the shit, alright? He is so good. I love him. My kingdom for Michael Keaton in everything. Not to mention, with great power comes great responsibility, and with a great Spider-Man comes great continued evolution for Tony Stark. The seeds for a lot of impending emotional impact are sown within this film, but we're being strict here. Skip it, Night In. A film where Thor becomes a train spotter, Thor Anorak. Ragnarok. Just a little joke for you. Subscribe for more. Where are you going? This belter of a Thor movie is directed by Taika Waititi, and you can tell because it is, I would say, the Marvel movie with the most filmmaker identity to date. It's a massive departure for Thor, who had been kind of a scene-chewing, serious boy until now, and I think Hemsworth had got a bit tired of it, put his foot down, and the result is this film, which is very, very silly. Arguably too silly. I remember laughing very, very hard at a joke within the first 5 minutes that they then undercut by repeating literally moments later. Let me put on my film student hat for a second. This is a technique called bathos, which is where you undercut the serious with the absurd, not to be confused with pathos, which is an emotional appeal to draw sympathy from from your audience, nor is it to be confused with Thanos, who is a big purple man who wants to wipe out half the universe while dressed like RuPaul. And Marvel loves a bit of bathos, but I think they overdo it a little bit in this film to the point where it's hard to fully care, but not so much that it stops being a riot. Also, every movie gets extra points for Cate Blanchett. However, they make him cut his hair off. I mean, he's Hemsworth, he still pulls it off, and he still has the arms, but it's a night in for me. Black Panther is an absolute must-watch. There is no two ways about it. 96% on Rotten Tomatoes, the highest rated of the entire franchise, 7 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, 3 wins, and Andy Serkis playing an actual human. This is groundbreaking stuff. It was kind of a crucible in the way a major Hollywood studio was pushing this film at this particular moment in history. Its blackness is woven into the very fabric of the film. It is unapologetic in its celebration of African culture, and yet it's an incredibly universal film. I am a small little white boy from the north of England, and I felt every minute of it. On top of that, it just plonks gender equality right in there for everybody to see. You know those memes that's like, the world if, and it has that really futuristic looking... Wakanda is that meme. The score is fantastic, the costuming is fantastic, there are some Shakespearean lines of dialogue in this film, and when a film does have that weight of expectation from a community that have been underrepresented, it has a very delicate line to walk, and this film met its moment fabulously. It holds up, and when you strip everything away, the question is it a good film? And the answer is, yeah mate, it's a good one. I do think you get just enough to follow the character from Civil War and the next film on our list, but if you really want to understand the impact of this character and his moments in the series and on the audience, you can't skip it. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a must-watch. Avengers Infinity War, don't bother, not a lot happens. I am only playing a game at you. You just gotta. It's all been building to this. This is part 1 of a 2-part finale, a pinnacle of filmmaking. It is a must-watch. But before we get to part 2, we have, 2 films that just not quite. First up, Ant-Man and the Wasp. It's another fun jaunt, this time with the addition of Michelle Pfeiffer, which I'm all for. And you learn about the quantum realm and Pym particle, which do play a part in our big finale, but the thing is, you learn about those in the big finale, so it's a rainy day moment. And then we have Captain Marvel, which pains me to say, big sigh. This film has so much going for it. Brie Larson is very good. The 90s are my most fave. Jude Law has the same birthday as me, but it just kind of is. Like, it spends a lot of time telling rather than showing, and when it does show, it doesn't show anything new or exciting. It just doesn't work the way I wanted it to. The best way to sum up my experience with this film is that I went to the loo and came back to find that there was a fight sequence taking place to the song Just a Girl by No Doubt, and I was more bothered that I'd missed the opening riff to the song than the fight. Big sigh. Rainy day. Avengers Endgame, the big kahuna, 3 hours, the highest grossing movie of all time, until they released Avatar in China. And, friends, the birth of what I call the Endgame wee. I have a notoriously tiny bladder, but I didn't want to miss a second of this film. So I went to the bathroom every 5 minutes before the lights went down to make sure that my bladder was fully evacuated, and I'm thrilled to say it worked a treat. Didn't need the loo once, and that, my friends, is why it's called an Endgame wee. And I'm pleased to report that's not even the best part of the film. This is a 3-hour movie, which is a whole movie longer than I like my movies to be. But there is not a single moment of wasted screen time. Every beat is perfectly measured and face-meltingly good. When I first saw the film, the audience I was with burst into spontaneous, rapturous ovation no less than 3 times. And it held within it my most treasured and special experience in 30 years of going to the movies. A music cue hit, a line was said, and an entire audience roared as one. Movies are magic, man. And it's films like Endgame that make me believe that the experience of going to the movies will never, ever die, because even after a horrible year like this, it's that communal experience, a shared emotional journey that we all treasure. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a must-watch. And then there's Spider-Man Far From Home, which, to be honest with you, at this point, you're completely caught up to date. So all you need to do is watch Far From Home, and then you're ready. So you know what I'm going to say now, don't you? Start planning those nights in. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Marvel Cinematic Universe Starter Kit! Yeah, that's nice, isn't it? We did it. But what do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Pop it in the comments, let me know. Or if you're here because you wanted that crash course, come back when you've seen the movies and let me know if you think I was correct. Thanks for watching. I've been Daniel J. Layton, and I need a girlfriend.